Hello and welcome to Dave Campbell's Rising, a show dedicated to shining the light on Texas high school football prospects all across the Lone Star State. My name is Mallory Hartley and I'm the coordinating producer of recruiting here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And sitting alongside me, it's my man GP. He's the director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's. It's Greg Powers.
Let's go. I mean, what a month it has been since the last time we sat down in this studio to talk about recruiting. Commitments are flying off the board.
Official visits are being scheduled.
Yeah, it's nuts right now.
It's absolutely nuts right now, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to catch you up on some of the latest recruiting news that you may have missed all across the Lone Star State. And in the back half of the show, it's y'all's favorite segment. It's Here's a Guy with Carter Yates. And then we'll check in with the Houston Cougars and how they're doing in the 2027 recruiting cycle. There's a lot to get to.
Am I allowed to give a spoiler? Pretty good.
Yeah, they're doing
pretty good.
Especially in the Houston area, keeping guys at home. But we'll get to that here in the back half of the show. Shall we dive straight into some recruiting news? Because, man, there's a lot to catch up on. There's a lot of kids that have committed, decommitted, scheduled official visits. We got to get straight into it.
Let's go.
All right. Off the top, one of the more important headlines, I think, is really interesting that we wanted to point out. Luke Babin decommits from Vanderbilt and makes his commitment to the Baylor Bears. He ranks within the top 10 quarterbacks in the state of Texas. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 40 touchdowns while racking up 562 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Powers, I think Baylor found their next big signal caller.
QB1, I mean, that's what I said whenever he made his commitment to Baylor. They found their QB1, and I think it was quite a coup to be able to go and take a SEC commitment, keep them at home in the Big 12. A lot of people thought that Luke Babin was going to commit to Oklahoma State whenever he decommitted from Vanderbilt because he was fresh off of getting an offer from Eric Morris and co. up in Stillwater. But Dave Aranda and his staff there in Waco did a tremendous job to lay a foundation there with Luke Babin and show him a pathway to being the guy under center, that QB1 that they can feature in their offense. And what I love about Luke Babin is that he is one of these guys who continues to get better and better. And he led his team to the state championship stage as a sophomore. And he was just a baby at that time in terms of recruiting and as far as his development. Watching him at the Rivals camp, he is a completely different type of dude right now than he was even when he led his team to the state championship game. And he was pretty good that year. He put up a tremendous amount of yardage and really put his name on the radar, so to speak, not only with some of these colleges, but statewide as being one of those top guys, right? And now he's even better.
My favorite thing about this commitment is Baylor continues to find those so-called hidden gems within Texas high school football, maybe those lower classification teams like Woodville in the 3A ranks. But, I mean, they love to find those hidden gems like the running backs or the wide receivers that may be flying under the radar because they play for lower classification teams. But they're finding absolute dudes out there.
Well, the thing I love about Babin, too, is you mentioned he plays for a lower classification. What I'm looking for a little bit on tape when I'm evaluating these guys at the 3A level is domination and success. And he's had plenty of that. As a matter of fact, you know, he's one of the more accomplished. And I think this is a great commitment because he's accomplished but still has a very high ceiling. Usually when you're saying or speaking about guys who have had so much success already at the high school level, and I think they were something like 24-6 over the last 2 years at Woodville. When you're talking about guys with a high ceiling, they're not usually this accomplished, racked up that many wins, but he's still got a developmental upside that is extremely high, and I really love that about him. Now, 8 of the top 10 quarterbacks, and you can check out our QB rankings, texasfootball.com/recruiting, but 8 of the top in-state quarterbacks are already committed off of the board. So there's only a couple guys left in that top 10, Colton Nussmeier and Andre Phillip II, that are left available. So all those players are committed to P4 schools. Good group of quarterbacks here in 2027.
Yep, and he'll be visiting Baylor officially this summer. So let's see if they can hold on to Luke Babin there. Let's move on to another position and talk about the running back. Sirrod Baker, one of the top running backs in the state of Texas. Not only in the state of Texas, I should probably say the nation.
For sure.
At this point. This is a kid who obviously had a great season, but what impressed me the most was his playoff run.
Sure.
I mean, over 1,600 yards and 19 touchdowns just in the playoff stretch. I mean, that's through 6 games there at DeSoto. And he's going to have a difficult decision coming up. Texas A&M, Texas Tech, all in the mix for this top running back.
Well, he went for over 400 yards against Willis. And we wrote an article at that time, 384 yards. Well, one of those pass receptions was turned into a rush, and because he caught the ball behind the line of scrimmage.
Right.
So fast forward a month or so, those stats are over 400 yards and against one of the top-rated teams in the entire country. And he has been on a tour since we last sat down here a month ago. He's went to see Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Texas. And we have talked extensively about those 3 schools' chances of ultimately landing his commitment, keeping Sirrod Baker in state. And Texas A&M, behind Coach Troop there in College Station, has developed a tremendous relationship with Sirrod Baker. Tiger Ryden is on scholarship there at Texas A&M.
DeSoto running back.
Former DeSoto running back. But as these trips have happened, the school that I feel like, if you're listening to this, you have to really keep a close watch on right now in the moment is Texas Tech. They did a tremendous job on his visit there of laying a foundation of why he could be the guy within their offense. He could be a marquee recruit to them at the top of their board. They've already got commitments from guys like Kavion Bryant and Benny Easter Jr. Well, to put a triple-headed monster together in Lubbock to add Sirrod Baker into that recruiting class could lay a foundation for a team that can continue to compete for national championships. And that's what Texas Tech did last year. They made the college football playoff, right? They've already started to reel in some of these top recruits, not only in Texas, but across the country. When you saw them go out and get a 5-star defensive end, which is like the marquee position, right, in LaDainian Guyton nationally. Now they're setting the table of, we're in this, we've proven it, we can compete for these elite guys. And of course, you know, Joey McGuire always has a great tie-in to that corridor of recruiting in the state of Texas. Former coach at Cedar Hill, very familiar with DeSoto, has a close relationship with DeSoto head coach Claude Mathis. So I really do think Texas Tech did a tremendous job of getting really squarely in the mix to where they could be positioned to land a player like Sirrod Baker.
All 3 of those programs, I mean, Texas Tech, and Texas A&M have a college football appearance in the modern day format, you know. And okay, before we move on from Sirrod Baker, give me a quick breakdown of his tape and his skill set. Why are these top colleges calling for Baker?
Well, I love his vision and his patience first and foremost. He's explosive. When you rush for that many yards and you put up that type of stats, I mean, the tape kind of speaks for itself. But what I'm looking at when I watch and break down his film is his patience, his vision, his footwork to make defenders miss in very tight quarters is extremely well. But the thing that gets me most excited about Sirrod Baker is his IQ and the passion that he runs with. He's a guy who has experience playing quarterback, so you know that he understands the offensive game quite well. But when his back's against the wall, he digs down for that something extra, and that's rare and unique. A quality that sets him apart. He's got that dog in him, as our friend Matt Stepp would like to say, and that's why he was brightest whenever the games were the toughest.
Yeah, I think that's like the thing that sets him apart the most is the lights were never too bright for Sirrod Baker. They were just right. And he succeeded in the moments where they needed him the most.
When the competition is on, right?
Yeah.
Whenever he was at the Under Armour camp, you were there. Whenever there were whenever there was a collection of top players, Sirrod Baker rose to the top.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what he did at DeSoto.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be one decision that we're all going to watch very, very closely coming in the next few months. Let's whip around the state and catch you guys up on some of the top prospects in Texas that are going to stay in Texas. We'll start off with Langham Creek outside linebacker Jaden Nelson, who made his commitment recently to Texas Tech. He totaled 59 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, and 3 sacks, and 2 pass breakups last season. Versatility is the word that I would use to describe Jaden Nelson.
Very versatile at 6'3", 215 pounds. He's probably going to be playing college ball at around 240 pounds. Plays safety on his highlight tape at times, so you know that he can fly around to the football. And that's one of the biggest questions. When you're looking at outside linebackers, you're looking at the linebacker position, you have to answer the question of how do they play in space? Can they cover running backs, tight ends? Can they play against the quick RPO game that's now very prevalent in college football? Well, Jaden Nelson checks all those boxes and backs it up with verified measurables. So I love this fit for Texas Tech. I think out of this class, I'm going to have him rated pretty high. He's already a DCTX 4-star. He's going to be a top 25 in-state guy for us, and it's because he projects so well to being a top-tier recruit. Definitely a guy who could be in the NFL draft one day.
Oh, and Texas Tech, if I'm not mistaken, was one of his very first offers, right? They came calling, and then he pretty much exploded overnight with a bunch of other offers.
And he's got some family ties in Lubbock as well, which I think probably helped play into this recruitment a lot. So, you know, more joy for the Red Raiders fans, because these are the type of guys that you want to land on when you have an in or something like that. Recruiting fans always get really excited. They're like, oh, well, his brother's here, or, his uncle played.
It's that extra blanket of security.
Right.
You know, for fans that are like, okay, well, he probably will stay because, you got the family ties. Well, it just adds a little bit of extra.
It's a bigger dagger when you lose them.
I know.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you're a Michigan State and you lose an Amari Vickerson, that's like a bigger dagger in the side, right? Because you have those family ties. Well, Texas Tech doesn't have to worry about this one.
Nope, they sure don't. Let's head out down to Austin and talk about Austin Westlake offensive lineman Jackson Cook, as he made his commitment to the Texas Longhorns last week. 72 pancake blocks. My favorite tweet that you've put out a lot of tweets. You've been grinding on the Twitterverse the last couple of months. But my favorite tweet that you have put out was when he made his commitment, you tweeted out that he totaled 72 pancake blocks last season, and you typed out 72 pancake emojis.
He deserved them.
I'm not saying he did it. He absolutely did, but that was my favorite tweet by far. And I think he liked it too, because he gave you a retweet.
This Jackson Cook absolutely blew up in recruiting, and he picked up an offer from Texas A&M right before he committed to Texas. So a little bit of a recruiting rivalry win for Texas too, because Texas A&M did officially get in the game for Jackson Cook before he announced that he was staying in the city in the ATX, playing his ball on the 40 acres with the Longhorns. Look, versatility is something that Jackson Cook brings to the table, and I love that about this commitment for Texas. He's a guy who has experience playing tackle, but he's going to probably play inside at guard or center. That versatility allows them to pursue some of the other top-tier interior line prospects in this class and put together what I think could be something very special, because they've already got and hold a commitment now from Jackson Cook. They're in on Brian Swanson. They're in on Keon Hemphill Woods. Those guys, if they could land all three of those guys, then you're talking about laying the table for the trench warriors, the monsters who will absolutely open up holes for a run game. And when Texas is hitting on all cylinders, they have a powerful run game. I love the approach that all three of those guys bring, but we're shining the spotlight on Jackson Cook right now. Very smart, high IQ guy. He can handle any of those positions, and guess what? If something fell apart, you needed somebody to kick out at tackle, Jackson Cook can be your guy.
Absolutely. He committed to Texas over programs like SMU, Arkansas, Duke, a wide range of schools that do provide a high level of academics as well.
Right.
So that speaks to his football IQ there as well. Let's head on out to Beast, Texas, and talk about Texarkana, Texas High offensive lineman Quay Ford, as he makes his commitment to SMU. And one of the things that I really liked about his commitment announcement was all he said was, Dallas, I'm home.
Huge get for SMU, because the reports were that he was down to SMU and Ohio State.
Yeah.
And anytime you can beat a school that's won a recent national championship in recruiting, that's a huge victory. Now, I've got some questions about Quay Ford.
Okay.
All right, Quay, if you're listening, here's my questions. I got listed on the questionnaire 300, 310, 330, and 340 for him. This is a big fella. Let's settle it.
6'5", yeah.
6'5". Let's just say 300 plus.
Yeah.
He's a big fella, and he's got a lot of left tackle experience out there at Texas High. And I don't know if the fans watching this broadcast may have heard of a player named Tredarian Ball, who was one of the top tier running backs at Texas High. Well, guess why he was so successful? He had a guy like Quay Ford absolutely mashing defenders, extremely athletic at over 300 pounds, and he's already rated as a DCTX 4-star. Huge win for SMU. I should have done some better research here.
Okay.
I'm going to guess that with him and Drew Evers from last year, that those are going to be the top 2 highest rated offensive line commits for SMU in the history of Dave Campbell's Texas football recruiting rankings, which dates back to 2012.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening. He commits to SMU, like you said, over Florida, Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas Tech, and a few others. So his list was pretty extensive. Everybody wanted one of the top offensive linemen in the state. Let's round it out here, and we'll head down to San Antonio and talk about Alamo Heights defensive end Drake Carroll as he made his commitment a couple weeks ago to TCU. Recorded 50 tackles, 15 tackles for a loss, and 7 sacks through 10 games at Cornerstone Christian. That's pretty impressive for only having a 10-game season.
And I think you touched on something very important here. He played at Cornerstone Christian last year. Now he's going to Alamo Heights, and that's a program that's known for producing a lot of top talent. Michael Terry, most recently, is a name that really pops off of the Alamo Heights list. Drake Carroll's tape is awesome. He dominated at Cornerstone Christian. He was absolutely you watch his tape, he's a blue-collar guy, and he is very physical, and he will absolutely punish you when he tackles you, and I love that. But under the radar, very explosive, kind of getting after it behind the line of scrimmage, making a lot of sacks, making a lot of plays on the ball carriers who think they're going to be able to escape him, but they just can't. I love the tenacity that he plays with, and now that he's going to a UIL school, I think that this is going to be a huge, huge win out there for the Mules defense because they got a TCU commit now, right? And a guy that they can hang their hat on. Very, very intelligent.
Yes.
Drake Carroll, to me, personifies a TCU commitment. Always these guys who have proven it on the field, understand the X's and O's of football, and kind of get what it takes to be successful once they get to college. They're going to put in the work. They're going to be accountable. They're going to show up with their lunch pail every day and do what the coaches ask of them. That is Drake Carroll in a nutshell.
Yeah, and you'll see that he chose TCU over programs like Northwestern, Cal, Duke, programs that are known for their academics. And I think you may have picked up on his favoritism towards TCU when we interviewed him at the Next Level Athlete Camp back in February, because when you asked him about that offer that came from TCU, he just looked at you and he was like, man, that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, they were his number one then, and schools continued to come in with offers and try to get him off of that, but TCU stood the test of time from the first time that he kind of took his visit there, got that offer from the Horned Frogs, stayed in the pole position for him, and then finished the race.
Absolutely. Alamo Heights defensive end Drake Carroll commits to TCU. I think we're finally done with our headline segment. I know it took probably about 20 minutes of your time, but hopefully you learned a little bit of news, recruiting news around.
There's been a lot going on.
State.
We touched on some of the in-state guys, but there's been a lot of good out-of-state commitments too. Just make sure that you're tapped in with us, following those recruiting profiles. We're updating them every day.
Every single day.
Over 325 active profiles
Yep.
right now in Texas high school football for the class of 2027. We're on our march to release a top 500 list. We have big ambitions here.
We
so
sure
just
do.
stay locked in.
Stay locked in to texasfootball.com/recruiting for all of your latest recruiting news around Lone Star State. All right, Powers. And I guess recruiting fans, it's time for one of y'all's favorite segments. It's time for Here's a Guy with Carter Yates.
Thanks, Mallory and Powers. Now here's a guy that needs no introduction. I'm talking about West Orange Stark running back Khelvy Jefferson, the 5'3", 165-pound prospect who can squat 550 pounds, probably pound for pound, the strongest player in Texas high school football. But I did uncover a little known fun fact about him. Did you know he runs out of the pregame tunnel cradling the Bible in his right hand? That's because he's taking these defenses to church every Friday night. They better pray they can tackle him. And so far, no one's been able to. He's become the West Orange Stark all-time leading rusher as a junior with 4,208 yards. And Coach Hiawatha Hickman says that when they pass the ball, there's only 3 outcomes: a completion, an interception, or an incompletion. 2 of those 3 outcomes are bad, but it's all good when you hand the ball to Khelvy Jefferson. Let's go watch tape of the living legend. Now, Khelvy's father, Shelvy Jefferson, I know those 2 names rhyme. Stay with me now, though. Shelvy was a linebacker on the 2000 state finalist team for the West Orange Stark Mustangs, and he's also the strength and conditioning coach. He's had a huge impact on his son Khelvy's life, and you're going to see all his teaching come out on the field. Khelvy's going to take the rock and burst upfield. Now I want you to notice this, 99% of running backs are taught to cut off the wide receiver's butt. And Khelvy's going to fake like he's doing this, but instead cut out, leaving that defender in the dust. And then we say, whoop, and the strength too. That's that 550-pound squat coming to play right there. Now, this is what's going to give a defensive coordinator nightmares. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 already missed it, and Khelvy Jefferson is somehow going to score on this play. He just refuses to go down. Now, Khelvy doesn't actually eat lunch in the cafeteria. He just goes to the offensive coordinator's office to watch film, and you're going to see that extra work coming into play by the way he makes guys miss in the hole. So yeah, they're just absolutely jukes out the linebacker, and he's off to the races, showing off the speed there to beat the safety. Now, first off, look at him just make this guy look like he's on rollerblades in the hole. And then he's going to cut up, and this safety has the angle on him. He should catch Khelvy Jefferson. One of the questions about Jefferson is his long end speed. But we see right here, he's got plenty to play college football. Beats him to the outside. There is no angle. You're not going to touch him. He's going to score. Now, in this play, you're going to see the grown man strength. Coach Hickman said that, yes, Khelvy Jefferson squatted 550 pounds. He probably could have got to 600 too, but Hickman got too scared and said, that's enough, that's enough. I mean, that made my back hurt just watching it. He said Jefferson could be a state championship power lifter, but this guy's focused on football. You see that power in here, whoop, in the hole, and then just burst through. So nice. So those are all plays you just saw from Khelvy Jefferson's junior season, in which he had 2,498 yards and 34 touchdowns, led West Orange Stark all the way to the Class 4A D2 state championship game. And Coach Hickman said he's already broken the record. If he has another year like that, man, there's going to be no one that touches this guy in the West Orange Stark history books. So why does he not have offers from all around the country? Right now, it's just Texas Tech that gave him an offer early on in his high school career. Well, of course, people have questions about the 5'3" size. They have questions about the long end speed. But you know who believes in himself? That's Khelvy Jefferson. Because before the season, when he got 2,000 yards, he put Mr. 2K on the back of his Letterman jacket. He called his shot, went out and broke that record. That's a guy I'm going to get behind, and it's a guy you should get behind too.
My name is Mallory Hartley, and I'm the coordinating producer of recruiting. And sitting alongside me, it's my partner in crime, the director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Greg Powers. Howdy.
Howdy.
We're just moments away from Braden Bach,
Striker Reed,
Jalen Lott, Savorian Martin. Donovan Webb is about to make his college commitment announcement. So you can hear the crowd behind us. Everybody is super excited.
This is really something special.
Thank you for any trainers and people who helped me, especially my mom and dad.
I want to thank everybody for coming out today for my commitment.
I thank my parents, my grandparents, everybody's here right now supporting me.
I'm going to be committing to
University of Oregon. Go play football and run track it out.
TCU.
I got to get my let's go in, you know?
Let's go! Welcome back to Dave Campbell's Rising, a show dedicated to shining the spotlight on Texas high school football prospects all across the Lone Star State. We thank you so much for joining us here today. All right, Powers, we got one last thing to do, and it's our college spotlight.
Let's go.
I'm really excited for this one. We teased it at the beginning of the show. We're going to be talking about the Houston Cougars today and how they have been doing so far in this 2027 recruiting cycle. And you spoiled it for everybody at the beginning. You said, they're doing pretty well, right?
Awesome.
And the reason that we're talking about them today is because really they have done a phenomenal job, not just this year, but in the 2026 recruiting cycle of keeping dudes at home that are from the Houston area that have stayed in Houston and made their commitments to the University of Houston, like Keyshawn Henderson, like Paris Melvin Jr., Johnny Abear, Javion Martin, all top-tier guys that we've had in our rankings that have stayed at home and have committed to Houston. This year, it's really been no different. They have they have got 6 total commitments in the class of 2027, 5 of which are from the state of Texas. And wouldn't you guess it, Powers, all 5 of them are from the Houston area. I'll go ahead and just read them off real quick. Barbers Hill defensive tackle Raiden Cook, Jersey Village defensive end Cale Thigpen, Cy Ranch quarterback Braden Baker, C.E. King wide receiver Braylon Lane, and Katy Jordan athlete Mo Poco.
Where do you want me to start? I guess I'll start at a guy that I feel like kind of set the table in this recruiting class, and that was defensive lineman Raiden Cook from Barbers Hill. And he was one of the true eye-openers on the camp series this year. 6'6", 270 pounds, looks like a guy who could absolutely be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He really passes the eyeball test, and I think that's why you're seeing his ranking soar across the national recruiting services, is because he's so talented. 6'6", yeah, you might worry about his ability to stay underneath his pads and play with. Don't worry about it. This dude is extremely mobile, has great hips, can bend that corner. I like him sliding inside, but I think he is a defensive chess piece for any team that puts him in the defensive front. He's going to play inside. He's going to play outside. He's going to be moved around to create mismatches. Extremely long arms, can get off of blocks, and can really, really run. What a huge commit for Houston. But the battle for Raiden Cook is not over. He's fresh off of an unofficial visit to Texas Tech.
Right.
The Red Raiders are making a serious push to try to get him to flip his commitment and join them in Lubbock. Texas has also extended him an offer.
Kentucky, too.
Kentucky, and he has plans to take an official visit, I know, to Texas. So this battle's just getting started. Houston currently holds the advantage. He's sitting on their commitment list. We'll see how it all plays out in the end. But this is the type of recruit that you want to be in the game with, right? Keep these guys at home. Battle these top schools to be able to get these commitments. And that's the era of Houston recruiting we're starting to get into with Willie Fritz. Success on the field leads to continued success in recruiting. And they had success on the field, experienced that last year, to give a guide map to these recruits, especially these local recruits, of why it's in your best interest to stay here. And now if they can start to double down on that, parlay that success that they're having onto the field into NFL draft picks, then it's going to be an even clearer picture for them to paint for these guys.
I think so too. One of the ones that stands out to me is probably Cy Ranch quarterback Braden Baker, in the sense of, if you look at their current quarterback, Connor Wigman, right, who played at Bridgeland. Then they're bringing in Keyshawn Henderson from Houston Legacy. Now they're bringing in another quarterback who is also a Houston native. They're targeting these quarterbacks that are from the Houston area because it seems like they produce some of the best quarterbacks in the state.
Well, I love the fit for Braden Baker at Houston because he complements Keyshawn Henderson so well. And sometimes we evaluate these recruiting classes in multiple year cycles, right? What did they get last year? How are they adding to that? What's the roster going to look like now in totality? Well, going into the 2027 year, you're going to have a quarterback room that features one of the best athletes in the entire country at the position in Keyshawn Henderson, who was the #1 quarterback in the entire country. And you're going to have a guy like Braden Baker, who at 6'5", maybe 6'6", is a pocket passer who can pick defenses apart. He had a tremendous junior year. As a matter of fact, Braden Baker is one of my favorite sleepers in all of Texas high school football. I think that a lot of colleges were sleeping on him. He did start to pick up a lot of steam right before he committed to Houston, picking up an offer from the SEC in a school like Arkansas. So they did beat some top-tier programs, some top-tier conferences for Braden Baker. But out of the gates, I feel like he picked up a bunch of offers early on and then had an even better junior season compared to his sophomore year, and teams kind of fell asleep on him for some reason. I didn't get it. I talked to William Blaylock at Cypress Ranch a lot about it and didn't really kind of understand how to fit all those puzzle pieces together in my mind about Braden Baker, because what I was seeing on tape wasn't matching the fervor that some of these teams were recruiting him with in the course of a great junior season. Now, that all changed. We predicted it.
Right.
We predicted, like, don't worry, you know, like,
You're going to be fine.
you know, film don't lie.
Correct.
Right? Film don't lie. So you're going to have all these opportunities, and all these schools are going to turn the heat back up on you because you possess the measurables, and you've proven it at the 6A level. Cypress Ranch had their best season.
Yeah.
And Braden Baker is probably the biggest reason why. So a team on the rise in Texas high school football in Cypress Ranch with a quarterback who's committing to a team on the rise in college football in Houston. I love it.
I think Cale Thigpen is also another one that kind of flew under the radar for a while. He only had a couple of offers heading into January from Texas State and Iowa State, I believe. But, I mean, his camp circuit this year, I mean, after that, and I'd like to say after you interviewed him,
Oh, well, thanks.
he kind of exploded onto the recruiting trail, picking up dozens of offers. SMU, one to note, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, Baylor. I mean, all these big programs came calling after an incredible spring that Cale's had.
I love Cale Thigpen. He is another one of these lunch pail guys, goes to work every day, laces up those work boots, and like just straight gets after it. Very versatile up front. We see him playing with his hand in the dirt, right? And that's what he does at Jersey Village. He's an absolute guy who will terrorize quarterbacks. I think he's a little bit more versatile than that. I think he's a guy who could spend some time standing up on the edge, being more of a guy that you can move around to pin his ears back and create pressure, blitz through the middle. At times, you don't get to see that on his high school tape, but I think he's a guy who could absolutely do it. And to me, the Rivals camp was full of top-tier defensive linemen down in Houston. Raiden Cook took home defensive line MVP honors, also on the Houston commitment list.
Right.
Caden McCarty was there, committed to Texas A&M. But I think full body of work, Cale Thigpen had the most productive day, and he was one of our top 5 performers out of that camp. Absolutely. As a result, there was nobody there who could block him. He got blocked a couple times. You're talking about an elite camp, but, you know, by and large, he couldn't be stopped.
Right, absolutely. Well, and before we move on from this, I want to play a little game, because I think one of the questions that people are going to have after this is, okay, who else am I going to be looking out for? Obviously, we're pumped about the 5 commitments that we have, but who are some maybe class of 2027 kids that we should be keeping our eyes out for, right?
Well, I'm going to start with who is the number 1 player in the city, Landon Williams-Callis.
Of course.
And they landed Keyshawn Henderson in last year's class, the number 1 quarterback. Having visions of a Keyshawn Henderson, Landon Williams-Callis backfield in Houston. You know what? I don't like to tip my hand whenever it comes to some of the decisions that are being made by the recruits. I don't like to tip my hand about things that I'm excited about that often. But just the thought of that jazzes me up as a football fan. Just because we're from Texas, they're from Houston, it's just exciting to think about. Now, Houston's got a lot of competition in the Landon Williams-Callis sweepstakes, Texas, Texas A&M, Oregon, et cetera, et cetera. He's down to top 15. He had so many offers, he couldn't even cut it down to a top 10 or a top 5. He's like,
I know, top 15 is huge to cut that 70 list down from.
Yeah, I'm going to cut down to 15 right now, but at the end of the day, you only have so much time to take official visits in a very tight window. So I think that Houston is well positioned to get one of those visits and make that pitch about him being the Keyshawn Henderson of this class. It worked last year. Can it work this year?
Right. Well, let's take it a step further. What about Fort Bend Crawford 4-star wide receiver Alvin Mosley?
He's fresh off of an unofficial visit there. Ole Miss is a school that you have to keep your eye on in this recruitment. A lot of top schools battling for Alvin Mosley. I feel like he's a wide receiver 1 and needs to be recruited as such. He's going to be in a top 20 of our recruiting rankings, not trying to give it away. Actually, I guess I could give it away. Here's a little bit of a plug. We set the top 25. You can go see it right now, texasfootball.com/recruiting. He's number 15. So you're talking about in a class of stars. This 2027 class is super talented. We give 54 stars away in every single recruiting class. This year, there are 75 guys who deserve to be 4 stars. So whenever you're talking about one of the top 15, you're talking about the best of the best in the biggest of the big state in the entire country for football. And Alvin Mosley is an absolute field stretcher, a guy who can play over the top of defensive backs. Great leaping ability, which also shows up when he's on the hardwood, as he led Fort Bend Crawford to a state championship this year in basketball. Alvin Mosley is that guy. I would love to see him paired with Keyshawn Henderson as well. You're talking about we talked about it with Texas Tech and Sirrod Baker and Kavian Bryant and Benny Easter. Well, Houston could be building the same thing. Yeah, they could combat that easily, and maybe even have a feather in their cap to say it's better.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's take it a step further. I really like Fort Bend Travis cornerback Josh Vilmael too.
Oh, I love him. And he's a guy that has versatility in the secondary. One of the things that I'm looking at in this recruiting class, and something that I hear talking to these players about who the top programs are, Sean Bell and Brian Bell. And they've done an excellent job on the offensive side of the ball. But to compete for Big 12 championships, to get themselves in the mix for national championships, they're going to have to also pick up wins on the defensive side of the football. And Vilmael is a guy who is very high on UH right now. And of course, his brother signed to play in the Big 12. He even talked about maybe could we play against each other in the Big 12 championship someday if I went to UH. But they have done an excellent job there. And a name that I'm going to throw at the fans here that I'm excited to see continue on his trajectory in Houston is Marcus Trice, recent hire from Stephen F. Austin in the secondary. Did a great job there on the recruiting trail, works relentlessly, and if he can start to rack up wins with a guy like Vilmael, Blake Jenkins, another Houston area guy that they're squarely in the mix for down there in the H to potentially join that class. If they can start to pick up some of these big wins in the secondary, that sets the table for a successful defense. Because I'm very high on that position being probably the most important. These edge rushers are going to be one-offs, right? You're going to get a Colin Simmons in a class that's going to completely change your defense. But the guys that you set the table with are the 5 guys on the back end of the defense. And if those guys escape the state and they go to play at Alabama, they go to play at Ohio State, they go to play at LSU and Ole Miss, then you don't have those foundational pieces to set your defense up for success. And I think it's very important for in-state schools to land these guys. Yes. And I'll even point to Texas. Texas started to land those in-state defensive backs, and they weren't escaping the state anymore, and that helped power Steve Sarkisian's teams to the top of the polls.
I agree with that. I feel like Houston is kind of like a Texas Tech in the sense of I don't feel like really in recent history that they've been able to even compete with the top kids in the state of Texas. But like you saw in the 2026 class, they're pulling the the top 10s, the top 25s in the state of Texas, kind of like Tech's doing right now. Like, it's just something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I would say, I even thought about it. Like, I don't want to say it's the new Tech.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're kind of following in that same trajectory that Texas Tech is doing.
I was thinking, should I say the new Tech? And I was like, I don't know if I exactly want to say it, so I guess I actually came out of my mouth anyway. But they've got the number 22 recruiting class nationally per the 247 Sports composite right now, which would be their best recruiting class ever. And they're trending for some of the top players in Houston. And they're going to continue to have success recruiting Louisiana. That number 6 guy on this list is a pretty good player from Louisiana. What I love about the Houston coaching staff is that they have their own idea of who these top players are. And you go through recruiting and you see a lot of guys that are following the blueprint or following other teams who offer guys. Houston doesn't do that.
Right.
Houston finds the guys that they want, they identify them, and they're not afraid to be the first offer. They're not afraid to push the envelope on a guy that they feel like fits into their schemes. And by and large, those evaluations at the end of the day, if you trust them, they win out. And I love that Houston does that.
It's been sunny days and nothing but in H-Town as they're continuing to pull in top recruits all across the Lone Star State from the Houston area. We'll see if they can maybe convince some of those big-time guys.
We'll have to. I mean, we'll be staying tuned like all of y'all,
Absolutely.
Trying to see who's going to join
We don't
this
have any
UH
inside
class.
information, so we're not sure. But just a couple names to keep your eye on if you're a Houston Cougars fan. I think that's going to do it for us. You got anything else?
I'm just jazzed up. Official visit season's coming. These guys are going to start to take all these trips. But more importantly for me, it's spring football here in the Lone Star State. A lot of these teams are kicking off their spring football practices. Pads are popping.
Pads are popping.
7-on-7 season's around the corner, which means the football season isn't too far away. I forgot your countdown. But I think when one of the guys committed, it was 159 days. So we're around the 150-day mark.
We're under 140, I think, now.
So, I mean, that's pretty exciting to think that football is starting to be just around the corner. And when spring football starts to happen, you can actually start to feel it's coming.
Yep, and commitments are just a couple months. We've already seen some kids make their commitments already, but obviously the bulk will probably be in the summer. And if you are a prospect and you're watching this and you want to be one of those live commitments on our airways, just reach out to us. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Mallory Hartley or reach out to Greg Powers on Twitter at GPowersScout, and we'll come do your live commitment and just make it all about you on our Dave Campbell's Texas Football Airways. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Dave Campbell's Rising. For Carter Yates and Sam Moore and Greg Powers, I'm Mallory Hartley. We will see you next month for another episode of Dave Campbell's Rising.